Okay,
Okay,
so
okay. It's give about
okay, I
10
got it.
seconds.
Hey, Dave.
Okay.
Wait. Let's wait until this thing gets
All right. All right.
going.
It's
I don't want
going
to
now.
repeat myself like I'm going to right now.
Hey, Dave, I have a question.
Oh, wait. I haven't finished answering the other question. I got to re-answer it because we didn't record it.
Okay, you're
And
recording
I still
now.
have 17 participants. Okay,
You may not get
as I said, SharpCap does support some cameras somewhat already. But if you don't see your camera coming up, and that's what you got to do is you got to go to the ASCOM, known as ASCOM, astronomy software website, which I will show you as soon as we get talking. And once again, for those joining us, I'm waiting. Can't see my clock here. I'm going to wait for another 5-10 minutes because it looks like we're missing about half the people that I was told would attend this piddling little webinar that I'm going to give.
Yeah, I checked, and it turns out that of the 34 people who said they were going to attend, I think about roughly almost half of them were hoping that it was going to be on another night. So this is probably going to be it.
Okay. Well, all right. I'll wait 5 more minutes and then I'll take off because I really don't know how long this talk is going to be. This is off the top of my head. Because I want to show you, how I use SharpCap with the proviso that I'm going to show you stuff that I had to learn at the very beginning. And one of which is that if your camera is not listed under SharpCap, you have to install the ASCOM driver for it. Now, at this point in time, ASCOM supports, I think, but don't quote me on this thing. I know it supports all the Orion cameras. I know it supports all of the ZWO cameras. I hate these acronyms. It supports, I think, all of the QHY cameras. God, it's even harder to memorize. I don't know if it supports certain DSLRs because I've never photographed with any of those with that before.
Dave?
Yes?
The only way DSLRs are supported is using basically an ASCOM type interface.
That's
because
what I thought.
there's tools available for that.
Right.
For certain cameras. I don't know how many are involved. I know Canon, Nikon.
And that's why I say basically if you want to know what cameras are supported, you go to ASCOM and you'll probably find your driver. If it's a dedicated astronomy camera, chances are very good you'll find your driver. If it's a DSLR or a non-astronomical camera, maybe it's supported, maybe it's not. But the only way to really answer that is go to the ASCOM website. Okay, we're 3 minutes away from starting officially launching this.
Dave,
yes?
can I ask you a question again?
Me?
Yeah. All right, Dave. You're using SharpCap 4.0?
Yes. 64-bit version.
Let me make a comment on that because
yeah,
people who are going to use it should understand certain things about it. It's the latest version of SharpCap, and it was designed kind of on the base of the version 3.2 that is currently stable. 4.0 includes a number of things that are not included in 3.2, one of which is a processing function that helps for display purposes to subtract the light pollution from your incoming images and your stacked image.
By the way, Vance, I may need your help with that because while I've used it a couple of times, I haven't used my rig since Anza Borrego. That was early November, so I'm a little rusty on that one.
All right, we'll do it tomorrow night at Garvey because I routinely have been using the.
Okay, let's see, tomorrow.
Harvey's the day after tomorrow.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
I think the 3rd is Thursday, if I remember right?
Thursday is the day we're going to do
the other part,
background subtraction, using SiriL and GIMP.
Right.
But Wednesday night, not tomorrow night, you'll see what I've been doing for the past several weeks is using what they call background subtraction,
background
or
subtraction.
light pollution subtraction in version 4 of SharpCap.
Yeah.
Now, the problem with version 4 is it gets update about weekly. So you got to keep track of what's going on. You got to keep checking the website for updates, because it will get to a point after about 3 or 4 weeks that the version, if it's too old, will stop working. You'll get a warning about it.
Well, I
Question about the software.
I always figure that
Sorry?
the time to update is, for me, would be that afternoon, because it doesn't do me any good to keep updating when it's like I haven't used, like I said, I haven't used my camera. It's the first time I used my camera
Yeah,
since
makes
early
sense.
November. So I've updated at least twice since then. But yeah, thanks for reminding me of that. Okay, 7:10.
Hey, Dave,
Yes.
I have a question about the software. So what you're going to show us tonight, is that going to work in the free version, or do you have to have the pro version?
I would recommend going to the pro version. It may or may not work in the free version, but in the pro version, you have full support. And I believe, I'm not sure, Vance may know, but I believe there are some features on the pro version. And I also recommend you get the 64-bit version, because my particular camera came to grief with the 32-bit version. Some features just wouldn't work. And I finally had to upgrade to 64-bit version. So that answers the other question, which will come up, which is what kind of computer can you use this on? First off, I think you need at least a desktop or a laptop, because, and you'll see why once you see the screen. I think there's only one version of SharpCap, and that basically works on PCs. Vance, did they ever make a version that worked on the Mac?
I don't recall. I don't think so.
I don't think so
but
either.
it will run with one of the
Emulators?
Windows emulators on
Right.
on the OS systems on Macs.
Okay.
Hi, David. I'm a Mac user, and I found that the only true way to use SharpCap is running on a PC that happens to be, in my case, mounted to my scope, and I use my Mac just to talk to that.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, that's what we thought, because this thing is not developed by any big major corporation or owned by any major corporation. This is some guy off in Britain, which you will see when you see the SharpCap webpage, which I might as well put it up here.
You're talking about Robin now, right?
Yeah.
Robin Glover.
Let me get there. Whoa, what happened? Wait a second. I think I lost the page. Let me look here. Let me look here. Nope, I didn't. Okay, here we go. Now let me get back to this and share the screen. Because as I said, I don't think anybody wants to look at me. I might as well share the screen. There we go. Okay,
Yeah,
everybody
good.
see this?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay,
Yeah,
now
you got
you
it.
notice the
You got it.
address. Okay, now
Now-
you notice, wait. Okay. I mean, I'm going to start my talk now. So if you guys could mute your, go to mute right now. I will handle more further questions at the end. As I said, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I will look at the clock, and at 8 o'clock, I will take a 5-minute break so people can do whatever they need to do for 5 minutes, and then we'll get back to it at 8:05.
One question, Dave.
Okay, real quick, Richard.
Why would we not be doing this with you on SharpCap?
First off, what I'm doing, I've hooked up my camera. Second of which is that for people to constantly bust in and say, well, how do I do that? How do I do that? This, if you've never experienced SharpCap before, even if you have, just bear with me and look at what I'm doing with it, okay? This is not a class per se. This is me telling you how I use SharpCap. That's the reason why. So you don't need to run SharpCap. I'll show you SharpCap in a moment, okay?
Okay,
All right, no further questions. Everybody please mute. Thank you. Now, this is the page where you get SharpCap. If you notice the address, you see my cursor up here, I'll just highlight it. It says UK right there. That's where the guy's located. I strongly recommend you do upgrade to Pro, and it's worth it per year. As soon as Vance introduced me to the software, I became hooked by it and has not let me down. I own 2 different cameras, one of which is planetary, one of which is deep sky. Works with both of them. Works with the ASCOM drivers that I have to use for both cameras. Although there is one possible dodge there, but it's not a big one. But this is where you get it. This is where you download it. There are forums. There's documentation for what it's worth, because I already found one thing wrong with the documentation. And I'll get to that when we get to SharpCap. Maybe. Now that I think about it, I may not get to that portion tonight. I will speak about it. So this is SharpCap. Then let's, not really much to say about this page, except that this is where you're going to get it. And then, don't need to see that. Here we go. And this is ASCOM. If you're going to Google search for this, you have to type in ASCOM astronomy, because you will not believe what comes up under ASCOM if you don't specify astronomy. I'm not even going to go there. So, but here you'll find out what drivers, other things you could go there. There is documentation. Although I found that all you have to do is install the ASCOM drivers, and then SharpCap should see them. And then you can go on your merry way. And again, I don't think there's much more to say there, right? You know, right there. I can just click on that. There's your download center. You find out what you need. Now remember, this is a general universal standards for astronomy. So they will have mounts there. So if you have problems with your mount, I wish I'd have known this when I was still using my 10-inch. If you have problems with your mount, you might try downloading the driver for that and seeing if that clears up the problems. Okay. Oh, by the way, if you have any questions, write them down someplace on your screen, wherever, and we'll get to that later. But let me just try and plow along here. And this is SharpCap. Like any other program on the laptop, you hopefully you'll have the icon. If you don't, it's easy to generate it. And this is it. This is what comes up. Now you can appreciate right away that, yeah, this is meant for a fairly wide screen. In fact, this is HP Ullman I'm working on, which is 64-bit with graphic acceleration. The graphic acceleration may or may not have a use with SharpCap, but it definitely has a use if you're going to do image processing with these large image files, which can be generated. Now, the very first thing you should check out under cameras. And you better see if your camera, there may be 2 versions of it. Notice this is under direct show, and this is the ASCOM driver. Now, the last time I tried this, SharpCap had to be restarted. So let's see what happens here. So you click on that. Spencer, you might turn on your mic, because is there any way I can just show for me the my screen and not show all the stuff for Zoom? Is there a way to do that? I'm trying to look for it here. Record, copy, disable, hide names, hide. Is it hide?
What are you trying to show, Dave?
I'm trying to remove all this gobbledygook that
He wants to remove all of us on the right side of the screen.
right.
So the only thing we see is his screen.
Yeah, and also the thing at the top.
Well, the thing at the top, well, you only have one monitor, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not sure I can help you. On mine, I just drag it off to one side.
I think if you do a share screen and they'll give you the option of what you want to share, you would just share the application SharpCap and that'll just share just that SharpCap window.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, you're sharing the screen, not the application.
Oh, okay. Let me try this. Stop.
So yeah,
Share.
unshare and then reshare just the application.
Stop the share and we'll try this again. Screen. Okay, I see it here. SharpCap. See.
There. Okay.
Okay, that helped. That helped you. It didn't help me. I got to get rid of this. I got to get rid of this.
We're still seeing the side screen.
Yeah, I'm trying to get rid of that side screen because that's showing up on my screen, and that's the problem I'm having right now.
Can't you just go to the app, the taskbar on the bottom, and you don't have to be viewing the Zoom?
Wait, guys, hold on. On our screens, go to view option on the top and turn off side by side mode. I got his full screen.
Where's at the top? View.
Very top of my window,
Uh,
it says you are viewing D Nakamoto's screen,
Yeah.
and then there's view options. And originally it said side by side mode. When I turned off side by side mode, I got your full screen.
I think.
I'm not seeing that. Probably because I'm originating this screen.
Yeah.
Dave, I think what you're looking for is something that we all adjust for ourselves in our own view.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Just go to the taskbar and bring it up the app on your screen, Dave, and not have the Zoom where you can see it.
Yeah, all I see is pin to taskbar or close window. If I close the window, I'm afraid that the session will end.
Don't close it. Just make it go down to the bottom.
Yeah, well, I made that go down the bottom. Now, how to get rid of the sidebar?
You won't need to if all you have up is SharpCap on your screen. Try and go to the SharpCap app on your computer instead of the Zoom. Just don't close the Zoom.
No, that's not working. It's overlaying it. It's overlaying it.
Just slide your mouse down to the bottom right corner. Your desktop should pop up.
No, it's not.
You have to slide it down to the bottom right diagonal corner and click it.
Yeah, I'm clicking on it. No, that sidebar is my problem. Okay, let me try this. Let me try it this way. Now I can see my whole screen. All right. Okay. Now this is my camera in direct mode. Now there are a couple of problems with this. The first problem is that as you scroll down, you see all these controls. The one thing you don't see is cooler control. And that's the problem with direct to video. And I talked to Robin about this, and he says, no, this is for video capture. This, I'm not sure SharpCap was originally developed for video capture, but anything in direct, going back up here, can you see this? See how I selected under direct show cameras, StarShoot G? You see my cursor moving, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Direct show video, at least for my camera, does not allow cooler control. So I don't know if the cooler's on. I don't know if the cooler's off. I don't know where it's probably off. And therefore, this mode is really meant for lunar, planet capturing, sun capturing, and so forth. But you're limited somewhat, and this is not usually the mode I'm in because I rarely photograph those objects. But you can see that you only have a small selection, relatively small selection of camera sensor area to select from, and this one is particularly large. So videos, this is why you need a fast computer, because videos are dependent upon how fast you can download down the USB. So you need USB 3. You need as fast a computer as you can haul out there. But like I said, a but a gaming machine is more than fast enough. So as we go down the list, you have capture profiles. So once you figure out a setting for all of SharpCap that works for you, whether it's planets or deep sky, you can save them and load them via here. Underneath is your format area. This is common also to the other mode, which hopefully I'll get to without having to reboot this program. But you have your output format, which I usually don't go to auto, but you can set it to auto. But underneath there, notice you have single files, and you can say AVI or SER. I tend to use SER only because it saves a little bit of space. Then you got your video modes. There's only one for this camera for this particular, for direct mode. The size of the video. And I'm just curious. Yeah, it probably changed it. Don't change these things too often. First off, I would argue that since you're only taking a small part of the sensor to capture, that will speed capturing. So that has that advantage. So if you're having trouble trying to download the video fast enough, you might go to these other modes if it's available for your camera. Otherwise, I'd go full frame. That's certainly true for deep sky. Down here, let's go here. You've got your basic exposure levels. LX mode is long exposure mode. Because direct mode does not support the cooler, you're going to be limited by thermal noise, and that can build up awfully fast even on a cold night. So typically for this mode, I would set it off of LX mode, but you can do it if you want to. Like I said, I'm not going through everything because I don't necessarily go through everything. I would set the frame rate at maximum, but however, again, if you're having video download problems, here you go. The standard selection, although 1 every 8 seconds, that's kind of, I don't know what that's all about. Maybe some cameras need that. Here's your basic controls. Gain will be very important for both cameras because it allows you to be more sensitive to, or at least download at a higher gain with smaller exposure time. So depending upon your conditions, you may discover that you cannot use a longer exposure time, therefore you increase the gain. The trouble with that is that you increase the gain, you increase the read noise. So it's typical of all camera software. That's the game you have to play. So that's not specific to SharpCap, but it's a good thing SharpCap has it. And white balance, color enables either 1 or 0 here. You either have it or you don't. You have color or you don't. Gamma is that typical hump or depression in the middle of the light curve. That's important for any object because objects are not uniform in brightness. Color saturation, the overall hue, contrast, and brightness. These things are typical for all cameras. So there's nothing different about SharpCap here. It's just that it's all down here. Now, this stuff is a little less important for this particular mode because the dark, not the dark current, but the thermal noise alone is going to play havoc with your images. But you can subtract dark frames. How you get them is up to you. I just covered the front of my telescope in case you're curious, and that seems to work very well. After I took care to kill all stray light, and you can take a flat frame, and you don't want to know how I do that because you'll laugh. Okay, I'll tell you. My townhouse is so brightly lit in the driveway. To take a flat, all I have to do is keep the lights on, turn and face the wall that's right next to my garage door, that's sticking out, and just point it at it and doing it that way. That actually provides a good flat frame, especially if I focus at infinity, it isn't going to see that wall, but it will see the light. Okay. Most of these others I don't use, but this one down here I use a lot. Now, okay, let's uncover the camera. Let's see what happens. And the only reason I uncovered it is to keep the day. Yeah, you see. You may ask, why is everything so bright? Well, 4-second exposure time. What do you want? Let's chop that down. Oh, there we go. And there you have it. There's a typical readout. Now, this is not optimal, but it does show that, yeah, what you're seeing there is over here. It's predominantly red, and as we go higher up in frequencies, it gets less and less. That's typical for my kitchen area. I'm just chop this thing down. This is closer to what you might see, but you need to balance out these things. That white line is luminance. That's overall. And that you can, well, what's that little creature? Yeah, white balance. And you just eyeball. Oop, didn't work. So probably hue. There we go. To some extent. There we go. A little bit more. Okay. And there you see the green approach the red. Blue's still out of kilter, but there's not a lot of blue inside this kitchen. So if you want to, you can take video. Now, we'll disconnect that. Go to deep sky. Now, for me, I don't know if this always appears. It always appears for me. You got to set these things up for ASCOM. These are more or less the default settings, except I think it was 8-bit and I specified 14-bit. So, and there we have it. Now, notice that notice that everything's the same. Chop that down. A lot. There we go.
Oh, you've got fluorescent lights.
Yep.
Yeah, well, gee, I wonder how you could tell that.
I have no
Anyway.
idea. Dave, let me make a comment.
Okay.
When you're setting the white balance, you should target 5,000 or 5,500 kelvins. That'll give you a better balance overall on deep sky objects.
Yeah. Although well, okay. That's a good point. Now here you see a new control, because under ASCOM, and only under ASCOM for this camera, whether it happens with other cameras, I don't know, but I suspect that it did happen with my G3 camera, which uses a totally different driver. So I suspect that under direct show, over here under direct show, and you're going to select one at a time, by the way, gentlemen and ladies, you basically, you don't have all camera control. To get control of every aspect of your camera, including the cooling power, you should use an ASCOM driver.
David,
Yes.
if you're using a ZWO camera, SharpCam has native control, and I have 100% control of my camera, including thermal, but not with a percentage, a temperature, and it does talk to it 100%.
Yeah, but as you just said, you don't have there's some things you can't control about the cooler. Here you have
No, I can control 100% using a ZWO camera in SharpCap.
Okay.
They have native control. That's
All right.
all I'm letting you know.
All right. Okay. But here you suddenly have your cooling power. You can set the temperature. This basically, even though it's a slider, that's that does set the target temperature. It's this slider, the temperature, that will vary depending upon where the cooler actually arrived. And the cooler is on, even though technically it doesn't make any difference. Under image controls, you have a timestamp frames. I happen to turn it off. Once again, you have dark subtraction and all that. Now coming up, you better not be dying on me, mouse. Sometimes it's finicky. So under your capture control, you also have some of it here. Start capture, if you notice under here, there we go. Come on. You have start capture. You have quick capture, which is actually just for video. All right. Although be very careful with the camera with this many pixels. I found that the image files get really large at 500 frames. So typically I limit myself to 200 or 100 frames. Although AutoStacker will handle 500 frames at nearly 5,000 pixels across. Right? So thanks to Vance for cluing me into that thing, because it saved one particular lunar video. Snapshot just takes whatever you got here right away. And here's live stack, which you can't get to because we need an actual sky with actual stars with actual tracking. So much for that. So let's see. Now you find a lot of that here, but you also find a few other things. You can let's get back here, because there's something on the SharpCap settings. What the heck? Oh, here we go. The one that I found, there is polar alignment, logging and stuff, but the only one I typically set is file names, because I do like to know where it is that I'm setting. You could set it to any folder. This is a general folder, and later I move the images and videos that actually turned out okay to another folder there. But you could set it here. Yeah, all sorts of options. See, the problem with SharpCap's got so many options, I just can't go through all of them. And as a matter of fact, I don't use most of them. This is the only one I use under here. I don't use it to set this. I set it once and I forget about it. SharpCap will remember your settings from session to session, so that's not going to be a big problem. The one to two things important under capture though is capturing dark. I'll show that window. Yes, they go through steps. It averages out a certain number of frames, which you can set to reduce noise primarily. I'm not sure why this is not set, but you can either, I usually set it into the capture folder. Now the capture folder, remember well, let's go back. Let's go back just for a second. Remember under under file names, this is where SharpCap will store all of the files. Under that will be a file with the date. A folder will be created with the date on it, and that will be all the data you collect for that particular date. Under that folder will be subfolders created every time that you, certainly when you live stack, it will create a folder for that. And I think for individual snapshots too, but I've never tried that feature because most of my stuff is live stacked, if not all of it. So that's another thing that I haven't tried, so I can't comment more on it. But getting back to dark frame, so you select the capture folder or dark library. It tells you cover it up, and then you start capturing. And it'll capture that many frames and average them and stick them in that folder or that folder if you wish. Now, the other one is capturing flats. Now, as you say, it guides you through the process. For some reason, it's telling me I don't have enough exposure time. That's weird. So if it tells you this, you're in trouble. Now you got to do this, the exposure time. So I'll just put it up. See, notice how these curves change. And yes, that's the red, that's the overall or the luminance, that's the green, and that's the blue. And it checks it for you and it says, okay, I'll accept that that's a reasonable flat frame. So it guides you along with the process. And then once again, number of frames to average to clear out the noise to a certain degree. Vance may comment more on this thing. Typically, I don't create a monochrome flat frame because I have a color camera, and I never shoot in a monochrome environment. In fact, I haven't shot in a monochrome environment in about 20 years. But if you're using narrowband filters, especially individually, one, and you're not A and B, you're not A and you're not using a color camera, you might want to think about clicking that. And again, it warns you. See, because it's detecting that, well, wait a minute, guy, you got red, green, and blue coming through here. So, this, I'll do it for you, but it's warning it doesn't make much sense, which is why I click it that way. And once again, now, Robin must have encountered people who says, well, I need 10 seconds to set up something once I click before I start taking flat frames. I don't know why somebody would do that. Maybe they're holding a flashlight in front of the telescope or something.
Some people have special flat field lighting systems.
That take 10 seconds to set up and
give you time to do it.
Okay. Anyway, you could start.
I agree with that. I have a flip flat and it might take 2 or 3 seconds for it to actually close
the
panel and turn the light on.
Okay. Why can't you? Oh, I answered my own question. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, there you have it. Those are probably the most important corrections that you can apply to the actual data. Oh, by the way, one other thing. This is just a data capturing tool. It is not image processing. Okay, so keep that in mind. You got your view frame. You want night vision. If you want night vision, you can have it. If you don't, that's what you get. Nice bright contrast and but that depends. You might not want, if you're like me and at a dark side, you use something called Rubelite to redden the entire screen and dim it. You probably want this off. But if you're going into your townhouse driveway, this is nice for that. Go to 2 monitor view. Again, I haven't used all these. These are more or less all of the default settings I'm showing you. Yes, I'd like to see that histogram. Both. Now let's kill that. Yeah. See, histogram is gone. So I haven't gone through the sequencer. Never run it. Because typically what I do, now that I'm in the typical environment, first off, very quickly, I don't take video when I go deep sky hunting. So you have your pick. It still shows SER there, but you have your selection. Now again, as Vance pointed out to me, if you can process, if you have the tools to process in 32 bits, please process in 32 bits because it does make a difference insofar as things like noise and enough contrast between in the object. But you know, and fits needs special software to process. I know a Paint Shop Pro will not process it directly. I'm not sure Photoshop will.
Dave, the SiriL that I'll be
certificate
discussing
aspect
later does
Ja-
process fits.
David, all of these formats require special processing at some level. I mean, for those of us that run off Macs, we capture on Windows, but I would have to figure out how to deal with SER files or even AVI files.
Okay, good point. Here you could set, I've gone back to the SharpCap settings because I remembered something. Yeah, here you could set your preferred video format, although these days I would probably go with that. And the preferred still format, but you can still set it manually over here. What I'm trying to see is where I set 16 or 32-bit because I know that's an option under TIFF. I just can't remember where. If I get to it, Anyway.
David, sorry to jump in, but
Oh, here we go.
why would you care about a TIFF output if you're doing video?
You wouldn't.
Okay, just checking.
If you look here carefully, the only video output file is SER.
That's or AVI. Oh wait. Oh no, there is no.
Oh,
AVI
there
there.
isn't. Take a look at my screen.
Yeah, but why is there no AVI there? I thought it had a choice of.
Because apparently under the ASCOM driver for this particular camera,
Okay.
it assumes deep sky. Now that raises me the question of, since they're assuming deep sky mode now, why would they put SER there? But you know what? Some people are weird that way. I prefer one of these other formats. Ideally, it would be FITS. Second, ideally, would be TIFF. And if it supports 16-bit, maybe PNG. But
Yeah, I'm a PixInsight guy, so for me everything is fits, but that's stills. That's not video. Video is
no,
not
it's not
captured there.
video. The SER is video. In any
Yeah.
case, we come down here. Depending upon your camera, you may have more than one way to capture the color. Not under this camera, but under this camera, yeah. Notice this scroll bar. Notice this goes all the way. And what this does, I think I display this for you. Let's say that for some reason I want to display it in this mode. And now notice this window. Now I can pick, and this is more obvious with an actual image, but I can pick where in the original sensor I can read out the data. So for instance, if the planet happens to be up in here, I can say, okay, I'll just do that. And the planet's centered without me centering it at this mode. But as soon as you select, and how low does this, they see this, I never tried custom, and I never tried that small because I mean that speaks for itself, right? It's like why would you look at such a minuscule portion when you got this huge sensor? And oh, by the way, and I tend to keep this. I don't tend to swap this that often, because the plain fact of the matter is, and as soon as I do this, oh wait. I didn't get all the way up to the top there. Nope. There we go, all the way up to the top. Notice that window disappears because you no longer need to know where in the actual sensor area you're sampling. But I always sample at full frame, unless of course it's video mode, but that would be direct show. But in deep sky work, I always do this because if you wanted to take out the little portion in there, that's what cropping does in post-image processing. So it's like, I'd rather have all the data so that if by chance I captured something way in the corner up here and I didn't notice it right away, at least I have the original data. For the beginners, always save the original data. Always save it, because and get as much of it as you can get away with, because you never can tell when something happened. This happens to me in video too. Something happened on the moon. What, the moon is here, but something happened up here. And I just happened to capture it. Later on, we can guess what in the world it was I captured. So always save the original data.
David, let me give you a different way to look at that. As a profession, as a professional.
Wait. Let's wait till the end, because again.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah, because I'm surprised. Oh man, I yacked away 10 to 8, so I got 10 more minutes. We take a break and get back to it. Here, the exposure time. Now, LX mode becomes important here. You can click on anything, but the weird thing about, and maybe this is just this camera. Again, I've never experienced any of the camera, but it does happen with the G3. Notice how it increments. Powers of 2. And I'm not going to show you up here. However, I will tell you that at Anza Borrego, I got up to 256 seconds for a single image. And yes, it tracked. I was more concerned that my mount was not going to track, but I balanced it out carefully and it tracked. So the sky's the limit. Let's see how far does it go. Now we're not going to get to the end of this because, yeah, 500 seconds. I can't even do that math in my head. So at least with this camera, it's somewhat limited to, and you could type this in directly too. Just like you can, well, except for the previous windows. Like if I want exactly 2 seconds and I didn't like that answer, there you go, type it in. Once again, once you set up something here, you can go up here and move that out of the way. Thank you. You can go up here and save it. Save as, actually. If you're saving something new, save as. Because if I hit save right now, whatever I've done to this window gets saved where? Right there, which I don't want to overwrite. Or you could load that file. Now, for this particular camera, typically I've set it to a gain of 1,000. That seems to be a good compromise, but I would keep an open mind about that thing, because once again, if you increase the gain, you decrease the exposure time, and that might be important under certain conditions. Or you get a brighter image without fiddling with the controls down here. Just to set the flat. I'll get to that in a second. So it goes by the way. However, the more gain you apply, the more both possibly thermal and definitely read noise you're going to amplify that too, because the gain is the overall gain of the camera. It's not just the gain of the pixels, certain pixels, but all the pixels. So just keep that in mind. And a lot of this I can't be either too engineering or too scientific-y about, because quite frankly, I play it by ear. But once I settle on a certain exposure time that seems to work fairly well, I save it as, and I use it again and again. And by the way, notice this is there, and I didn't load that. The last thing that you saved or you loaded, next time you bring up SharpCap, it'll be right there. So I don't have to go through this exercise or remember, okay, I got to load these settings. No, it does it for me. It says, this is what you had the last time, I'm going to load it up. Very convenient and very nice. I like that feature. Some other software, particularly from Celestron and Orion telescopes, didn't do that. And that's another reason I went to SharpCap. it has a lot of cool and unsaid features in it. It just makes life so much easy. Now, once again, dark frame subtraction and applying flats. This stuff here I usually don't play with, but here's an important tool because you can adjust the dark end like that, which doesn't do much because everything's light. You can adjust the bright end, which again doesn't do much because everything's bright. And you can adjust this stuff in the middle. That's negative gamma. That's positive gamma. Now, if for some reason you just want a quick look, you hit this button and it tries its best to get the best fit of all those three parameters. If you want to go back and set it flat, you do that. Now, up here, I can't get rid of that window. Put it down here. That's good. I don't care. Okay. You can select what kind of frames you're storing. Although if you go here, you don't have to do that. These will be stored as dark frames. These will be stored as under flats. And I want to say there's separate folders from both, and I think that's the way I remember it. But if you want to do it the hard way, go ahead. Now you set your own dark frame. Notice that window, this window, did not come up when I do this. That's because you're going to create your own dark frame based upon settings that you set over here in part, but it doesn't do averaging. You have to do that yourself. And it won't necessarily store it. In fact, I guarantee you it won't necessarily store it to wherever this will store it to. And the same is true for your flat frames and your bias frames. And I don't know what dark flat frames are. I have no idea. Never. But for your initial image, of course, you use light frames. Now, target name, I believe it works whether you save individual frames or whether you save video or whether you save live stack, which is a boon because instead of some nomenclature that SharpCap puts up, I can do this, which would have been the target tonight had we had clear skies. A, because it's relatively bright. B, because hopefully that makes it relatively easy to track down with star hopping techniques. And C, because I've never photographed it from my townhouse. And D, because with the light pollution I have in the back of my townhouse, it probably would have made a good target for Vance to process. So you just hit the return there, and then now that's how everything is displayed. Now I'm just going to take a shot here. I can't show you live stack, but there's some things about it. Yeah, let me just pause that for a second. Oh, but that was interesting. Oh. It ain't pausing. Oh no, it's ignoring those frames. Yeah, it's ignoring those frames. Yeah. So I'll explain something here. This is your basic control for a live stack. Yes, we will hold another session. I'll show you how it actually works because it isn't working right now. Live stack takes the first image. It assumes that it's a pristine image. In other words, there are no trails on it. That's important. Live stack will not correct for trailing. It's not that kind of software. It requires that the stars be more or less pinpoints, and more or less means more or less. I mean, I've had nights where a lot of the stars were bloated because seeing, quite frankly, sucked. And but live stack bravely tried to stack them up, and it did. It does a centroid tracking apparently, but that will always be one as long as this image shows untrailed stars. Every time that SharpCap can't identify enough stars in this image, and how could it now? It will ignore that frame. Notice that we're already past the 31 frame mark. And it tells you the total exposure. So you have the equivalent. And I might as well comment on that right now while it's on my mind. Any form of stacking, and I have to say to Vance that I've seen this at Garvey Ranch. I suspect this is what's happening. Most of the time, what's happening is, well, with all stacking, the signal to noise ratio, that is, the star is the signal. The centroid of the star is the signal, any star. The noise is that background way at the bottom. If you look at a chart like this, let me reduce that time. We get a decent looking image. Let me just reduce that. Let's get out of this mode. Yeah, this mode. Come on, chop, 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 chop. One, chop. Oh, it might be the gain so darn high. That might be. Yeah, let me. Oh, yeah, okay, all right, fine. Let's just keep chopping down. Yeah, see, that's why the image is so white. Everything on the display side, which is what we're seeing there right now, or will be in a second, I noticed something, is all the way to the right. We wanted it here or in this region, somewhere in this region. So I just gotta keep chopping the exposure. Some more. And it may be because the gain's set so darn high. Yep, maybe. Okay, I may have to turn off another light or so. But what happens is that in a single image, a signal to noise ratio is the strength of the signal, usually the biggest one, and the noise floor way at the bottom. See, the noise would normally be down in here someplace. But on a light polluted image, that first big hump, the first one that appears going from left to right, is basically your light pollution. If you're not in a light polluted area, then it's your noise. It's the noise within the camera, the read noise, thermal noise, whatever else you could toss in there. And ideally, you want that somewhere in this region. Why? Because if it's all the way back here, then your signal is here, most likely, or most likely here. But and I wish I could move this hump, but I can't. But if this hump is here, then your signal may be here or here. Depends upon the brightness of the object and how many frames you stacked. But in a stacked image, the signal to noise ratio is degraded by the square root of the number of images. So to give an example, and this is very rough, but this gives the gist of it. For a single image, if say like after 10-second exposure, the brightest star is 100 pixels, let's just say for sake of argument, and the noise is down at 10. Hopefully it's better than that, but let's say this is 100. 100 is the star signal and 10 is where the noise is. If you double the exposure time, in theory, and most of the time in practice, double the exposure time, now that 100 becomes 200, and now the 10 becomes 20. See what I'm saying? And it follows that. Unfortunately, with a stacked image, the signal to noise ratio doesn't follow that rule. The signal to noise ratio deteriorates to a certain extent the more frames you take. Now, initially, the square root of n, if you remember your math class, goes up rather sharply. So it almost looks linear. But then eventually it tails off. it starts to tail off because obviously the let's say the signal to noise, let's say the signal, the star was at 10, a value of 10, and the noise was at 1. Now you take 10 exposures. Now you think that your signal will climb up to 100, and your noise is down to 10. Actually, you have to multiply that by, you have to adjust that by square root of n. So it's actually not at 10, it's probably closer to 80. It's trailing off. So there's only so much that stacking can do, but stacking is still, for those of us that can't afford to take long images, stacking is still a boom because you can do a lot, as Vance has demonstrated at Garvey Ranch, and I've done from my backyard. Now, this is one of the more important windows, is the histogram. Over here, yeah, I gotta move this thing again. Okay, give me a second. Because I can't see my own window. There we go. Let me push this up here. Now I can see my own window. Yeah, Zoom is blocking part of my image. You probably don't see it, but I do. So under the histogram, there are two controls. These controls control the color balance. If you want to reset it, you hit this button, the reset button, and that's actually what's coming through the camera. If you want to display what's coming through the camera, you want to flatten out this curve right there. Just press reset. And I don't know why it doesn't quite flatten, but it flattens it out for the most part. Once again, red, overall luminescence, green, and blue, which explains why the color looks like the way it is. This, by the way, is a combination of this controller and this controller. Now, there's two ways to autocorrect. You could correct due to the peaks. If you hit that, notice that it tries to line up all the peaks together. And that explains why the something went gray. Because if all the colors are balanced, what do you get? Gray. You can also do it auto balance, measuring the actual star color. So it's not the overall histogram it's looking at. It's only looking at stars and trying to balance those. Now, for whatever reason, I've never had much luck with that. You may, and if you do, let me know, because I'd like to know what conditions this actually worked. But I tried it with 2 different cameras and 2 different telescopes, and this one, which is auto balance from the peaks, works, and that one doesn't. Now here, you can auto stretch. Now notice that conveniently brought up the black and brought down the white. So we're only displaying, what you're seeing here is only the brightness levels between, this thing keeps changing. That line, which just changed arrows, and that line, which just changed arrows. And if you want to adjust the gamma, you simply do that. And if you increase the gamma, notice that the image becomes brighter, but the brightest brights don't change the levels, and neither do the darkest, or you can dim it out like that. And you can adjust it manually if that's what you want. The other one that took a while to figure out what happened is, if you have problems trying to get this number to quit incrementing, then you got to come here, because this is the actual control of the alignment. In other words, SharpCap is going to find a certain number of stars, this, which you can adjust which stars it sees by increasing the sensitivity. And you can decrease the number of false stars, hot pixels, for instance, by increasing this number. And it's a tug of war between these numbers. Now, the documentation says the SharpCap needs a minimum of 3 stars, but this number, unless they lied to me again, this number never goes below 10. Never, ever, ever. You can set it up fairly high, 25. But if you can't find more than 10 stars, you might try the following. This mouse. Increase the exposure time, obviously. But sometimes, due to the mount, due to other factors, you really can't increase the exposure at the time. Well, another reason is seeing. Your stars are getting bloated because the seeing just plain is rotten. You might think of increasing the gain to compensate for that. But most of the time, exposure time is your friend when trying to hunt down 10 or more stars. But yeah, it's minimum 10 stars. So I found that's a hard limit. For instance, that's one reason I can't use my max suit off, because the field of view is too narrow. Most star fields don't have enough stars. There are exceptions, but most don't have stars. Okay, let's take a we're talking about this. Let's take a 5-minute break here. And I'm gonna get some water. See you back at 8:15. Okay, I'll wait another minute. Okay. Just a few more things that I finally noticed. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff you can do here. It's sort of like Word or Excel, or at least the way I find them, or even Photoshop or anything else. You got a ton of features, but generally, you know, this over here is your main window. This is your friend. But this live stack for deep sky, for those of us under well, photographing in different conditions, it's a godsend. Now I don't know, because I've never used narrowband filters. I know you have to take long exposures because you're only getting like a few photons, where the rest of us are getting a billion of them. But the reason why is to cut down on light pollution. As you can tell, there's a certain limitation to the exposure time here. I'm not sure. That's probably part of the ASCOM driver for this particular camera. Whether you'll encounter that with yours, might as well don't play the yearly subscription. Download SharpCap, see what it offers, and that'll answer your question. Unfortunately, there's so many different cameras out there, even from one manufacturer, that it's just, and also some older cameras that are still in existence that will no longer being sold, that it's impossible to do all that. Getting back to the stack, this is usually checked off already, because it doesn't make any sense. Why would you stack if you're not going to align the frames? SharpCap does do linear alignment. Notice how I'm doing this with my cursor, and also rotational alignment. However, each frame has to be non-trailing. In other words, you got to set up your exposure times and your equipment so it doesn't trail. Now, Vance has used SharpCap with an alt-azimuth mount. At least that's what he told me he did. And he may comment further on that as soon as I get done here with my yakking. The other things that I tend to find here, but I've only used once by accident, is saving raw frames. Save all. And what that will do is that will, I believe that will stick the individual frames that it's stacked. That, in other words, they're not under this category, they're under this category, also into the folder for that particular object and for that particular time. Yeah, SharpCap, every time you start another live stack, it will generate a new file name under the folder that you saw under here, and also the time for that folder, date and time for that folder. So there's many subfolders. So it's very well organized from that standpoint. You need not worry about that. Obviously, I like to view the stack. I believe Vance does too, because you want to see your progress. How do you know that you're at the point of diminishing returns unless you see you're at the point of diminishing returns? So that goes without saying. And I always use default. I tried using Sigma clipping, but maybe Vance saw a difference, but I didn't see a real difference. So I just said, you know what, I'll go with the default. You got options under save. By the way, depending upon how you feel about things, you might want to pause, hit the pause like that, and go under here, and you have 4 options. You can save as a 16-bit stack, which is a FITS file. And I wouldn't recommend that if you can handle 32 bits, because 32 bits will produce a better image in the end, less noise, more definition, especially color definition, and especially color definition. Or raw 32-bit FITS. Or you can save with adjustments, which is this view only because, come down here, buddy. Notice that I didn't do any stretching on the displayed histogram here. So it will save this view. However, if you save exactly as seen, and you made an adjustment like this, notice how that changed the image here. That's what you will save. Which one you want to save? You know, you may decide, you know, I'll just set this to flat and I'll just do the adjustments here. That's perfectly fine. I mean, you got the same adjusters. You got the black level here and here. You got the mid level. It works just the same here and here. And the white level, both here and here. Oftentimes I use both. But sometimes if I look at this original image and I just figure, you know what, I'm fiddling with this thing, nothing's improving, I'll just save the original and flatten out this thing. And that's basically it for what I do with SharpCap. Now, let me see if I could get my other screen back.
Dave, can I comment on something?
Sure, add away.
Okay. When you are selecting saves, you've got the 4 items in your list. And you got 16-bit raw, and basically that's 16-bit would be the TIFF. The 32-bit raw is the best one, of course. With adjustments means just the histogram adjustments in the live stack only.
This stuff.
Yeah. The interesting thing about, no, just a second.
Okay.
Interesting thing about the adjustments is that it will save a PNG with 16 bits per color.
Okay.
So it's an image with enough depth you can play with it. If you save exactly as seen, it will be saved only as an 8-bit per color image.
Oh, I didn't know that. Is that true for the new version? Or did he fix that?
Same thing.
Okay. Okay.
So what I typically do is I save all 4. Most of the time I use the 32-bit image. And I save the 16-bit in case somebody wants to play with an image. I can give them one that is by default going to work with most tools.
Right.
You can take a 32-bit FITS image and load into many of the image processing tools for astronomy.
And save as
the 16-bit color TIFF image will work with things like Lightroom and Photoshop and GIMP and stuff like that.
Pro. Yeah, I found that. Typically, that's what I do. And I guess, Vance, I'll leave it to your talk to explain the various programs because there's so many of them. But the various programs can be used to change a 32-bit FITS into a 32-bit TIFFs. God, spit that out. Okay, thanks for that clarification. Because yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, that's 8 bits only. Where I'm pointed. This is in PNG format. This is 16 bits. You could convert this from FITS to TIFF, keeping the 32 bits. So the preferred format, yeah, like I say, you store all 5, but the preferred one is this one if you really want to process your images and just do the conversion into TIFF. But if you're lazy like me, then you do that, because notice it says, and this is correct. Sometimes these captions aren't quite all correct, because if you notice here, it doesn't say it's 8 bits, or for that matter, that this is 16 bits. So
No, it doesn't, but let me
it's
explain
there.
one thing here.
Right.
The default with as viewed is what's on the actual screen of the monitor. That's 8 bits per color.
Right. And that's a combination, as I just demonstrated, of this control plus this control.
Correct.
Right.
So the save with adjustments is only the live
This.
stack histogram adjustments.
That's right. So if
Okay,
you
and
want
that'll
to
be 16 bits per color.
oh, I see what you're saying. So if
You
you
see what I'm
want to
saying?
see, if you want to see what's being stored with this, you got to flatten it like I did here.
Correct.
Ah, okay, I got you. So this is, so since I flattened this, this is what you will see, for what it's worth, with that, but 16 bits.
Yeah, that's basically the
Right.
point.
Okay.
However,
Right.
if you did have some adjustments for the screen histogram, the display histogram adjustments,
Right.
the save with adjustments will ignore that.
Right.
Save only what's
Right.
in the histogram adjustment in the live stack.
So just to go through that just one more time, since I flattened this thing out, this is in fact what you see with that.
Correct.
But
Correct.
But now that I've made this adjustment, this is what you'll see under that.
Correct. But that'll
But-
be 8 bits per color.
Right, right, right.
David, the important thing to remember is that when you're doing a save of any kind, unless you are trying to output directly from what you saw on the screen and you have no intention of processing, then you really want to save as raw, because all of those adjustments you made are trusting SharpCap to edit your image. Whereas what was captured on the sensor is all of the available data. And anything less than capture to raw is throwing away data. And a pro never does that, okay? Even if you're shooting a wedding, you might deliver JPEGs, but you don't shoot JPEGs. You shoot raw, you save raw, and that allows you to work with it later. So anything you do in here that is less than capture to raw is throwing away and or modifying the original data.
Yes, I understand that. However, since I am not doing this to make professional looking images, I often do not store this way, but I store with adjustments at least, because I want to see if you want to store raw, then I believe that is what you'll see.
No, my point is, when you store raw, everything you're doing right
Yes, I
now
know.
is inconsequential.
Yeah,
You
we've
get to deal with it later.
We already established that, but for my purposes, I want this to be what I see later with some further processing, because it's often noisy. There's often some things in there that just won't come out, that I try to bring out post-processing, but oftentimes it doesn't happen. It depends upon the person. So it depends upon what you want to do with this, with the software. More importantly, it's what you want to do with your images. Because not every one of us is up to tens of dozens of hours of post-processing to try and get the most out of an image. I've been down that road too. I've been down that road too, and I prefer it to be here. But that's my preference. If your preference is raw, it's here. All I'm pointing out is that that you have the option to store in one of these 4 formats, and one of them is raw 32 bits, which if you want to do the best post-processing that you can, this is the format you store it in. But you do have these other options. Just be aware, this option that I'm pointing to now is 16-bit, and this option is 8-bit. Of course, this is 16-bit too. And the reason probably it's offered is because until fairly recently, not every available program was capable of processing past 16 bits. Because 32 bits is
Understood.
kind of tough on a computer. Okay, so let's let me get out of this mode. Let me get out of, oh, here it is. Hopefully I'm getting out of this mode. Hey, thank you. Okay, now I'm trying to expand this this side screen, but oh, here it is. Okay, you can all unmute. That's the end of the talk. Yeah, remember, this is just ask questions about SharpCap. Image processing is Vance's department, and we'll talk about that on the 3rd.
Got it.
Okay, but this is SharpCap.
David, I have a question for you. I use SharpCap. You actually saw me do it, God, at Griffith for a while, back when we used to have Griffith.
Okay, what's your question?
And I used SharpCap to track, I don't even remember what I was showing on the computer, but so that the people could see a live stack, right? And I had it tracking something. I don't remember what it was. And I never got plate solving to work. And in SharpCap, I think the only option is astrotortilla.
Correct. That's correct.
Yeah, I've never used, I can't comment on that because I've never used the plate solving, because I find things the old fashioned way. I star hop to them.
Understood.
I'm very familiar with the star field before I reach. That's the only way I could tell if I got the object, is that basically I have to do the plate solving at the finder scope. So
Well,
I've never used the plate solving in SharpCap, but there is plate solving in SharpCap.
Right, and I've never gotten it to work. They require astrotortilla. Now, what I have done as a cheat, because I haven't quite figured, that's why I'm here tonight, because of SharpCap's issues I've had. What I've done is I've cheated, and I used Nina, and I find my target in Nina. I plate solve in Nina, and I tell it to track, and then I don't tell it to take a picture, and I minimize Nina, and then go to SharpCap and tell it to take pictures. I would really love to find a way to get SharpCap to do the
Okay, then Richard.
go to and plate solve.
Okay, then Richard, I would recommend that you go to the forum and the SharpCap forum and discuss it there, because I'm sure somebody else has experimented with plate solving, and hopefully they can solve that issue for you. Or if it's currently not possible in SharpCap to do that, then you can alert Robin, and hopefully he'll improve his plate solving and solve your problems. But that's all you could do at this point in time. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? Don't forget,
Yeah.
most of you are muted. In fact, only Vance, me, and Richard are muted. So.
Yeah. Hi, this is Martin.
Okay.
Dave, thanks very much for doing this. I actually have 5 questions. They're probably all simple, but how do we want to do this? Can I ask 1 or 2 and then round robin to others? See.
Dude, go.
We'll see. Huh? We'll see. I was debating how to handle this, but
Okay. All right, let me stop and call time when you want to go to somebody else.
Well, we'll stop after the first question, and I'll ask, does anybody else have a question? And if nobody else answers in a few seconds, then it's yours. First question.
Okay. What still image file format do you recommend? I know we talked about SER for a video, but out of the ones that for still image,
I would recommend FITS, because and Vance will go into this more. I'll just do it briefly. Vance will go into this more during his talk, but I would go into FITS because that's pretty much raw. It's 32 bits. You can convert, as both Vance and I have said, to 32-bit TIFF, which can be accepted by Photoshop, PaintShop Pro. Does GIMP accepts that, right? And it can do the conversion, right, Vance?
Again,
GIMP, GIMP.
no, GIMP is not very good at dealing with fits.
Oh,
It's not, it does read it, but it's not very good at dealing with
but
it.
once you get a 32-bit TIFF, can it handle that?
If you've got a 32-bit fits image and you want to convert it to something else, I would recommend using SiriL, which is a free tool.
Yep.
And that will allow you to convert the 32-bit fits to 32-bit TIFF or whatever else is in their list of things that'll handle 32 bits.
That's right. That's the main conversion program.
Okay.
So-
And it's not the conversion program. That's an image processing tool
Yeah.
that I'll discuss on the 3rd.
Right.
But the fact is that it is a good tool for using just to convert files if you want to do something on another tool.
But the more data, the better. That's why we recommend, both of us recommend you try and save in the 32-bit format, unless for other reasons. And like I said, I'm not into this for becoming the Ansel Adams of astronomy. I use it as an observing tool. I just want to look at these objects without having to drive 3 hours into the desert or in the mountains and setting up where there's no AC power. Okay, so this is how I observe. It's not how I photograph. It's how I observe. Anybody else have a question?
What
Well,
was
I
software?
Wait.
Sorry, Richard, go ahead.
No, it's Eric.
Guys, it's just a really quick question, guys. I didn't hear what was the name of the software you're using for converting the files.
SIRIL.
Thank you.
You'll hear about it on the 3rd when I
Yeah.
do the.
Oh, you hear a lot about it on the 3rd.
Great.
So I have a quick comment. Are we averse to PixInsight in this discussion?
PixInsight is a wonderful tool. I used to use it exclusively. The reason I went to SiriL is I got feedback from numerous club members. They didn't want to invest that much money in a software license.
Yeah,
And
it's
so I
expensive.
looked around and found something that was free. It's not as good as PixInsight, but it's a heck of a lot cheaper.
Okay, the only reason I asked that question is because Martin asked about FITS files, and FITS files are pretty much PixInsight native. And that was the
Actually-
only reason I mentioned anything.
Okay.
Actually,
okay.
FITS files are not specific to PixInsight. FITS files are a standard in the astronomy world for the professional astronomers for saving any kind of an image that is done at a telescope with a camera. And the reason it's chosen is it contains the ability to include every single setting that was used in finding the object, camera settings, everything else
Right.
is all encapsulated into that file. And if
I
you
understand.
process the image in FITS and save it in FITS, you still have the original image there because the FITS file itself never changes. It's just what's displayed. It saves the processing steps, and you can erase them and go back to the original image.
Okay, now Richard, let's go back to Martin.
Yep.
Your second question?
On the gain slider and gain setting, what are the units in this program?
Gain
I
units-
do not know, and I do not care. The reason I don't know and I don't care is because and this comes from a former JPL engineer who was in the image instrument department. I have never cared because it's arbitrary for each camera. But what we used to do in engineering is we used to increment it and then measure the resultant noise level. And then we tell the scientists, okay, if you set it to 5,000, you get a noise level that's, we use digital units or DNs, which happens to be my initials by sheer dumb coincidence. But we say, okay, you got a noise level of 100 dN. And at 100, you get a noise level that's not even a fifth of that. It's more like 10 dN. It's a tenth of that. See, because the response tends to be nonlinear. For the purposes that I use SharpCap for, and for most amateur astronomers, the balancing act is to try and strike a happy medium between shortening exposure times, which is the other reason why you would increase the gain, as opposed to increasing the noise level, which of course you want to, it's almost like a golf game. You want the noise as low as you can go, but the exposure level is also as short as you can be. And so you get this tug of war going on this way. And that's my humble opinion on the gain settings. So that's speaking not as an amateur astronomer, it's speaking mostly as a former JPL imaging instrument engineer.
There is one other factor too. If you look at the various dedicated imaging, astro imaging cameras like ZWO and QHY and others, if you look at the specific characteristics of the camera at different gains, you will find that as you boost the gain, you lose dynamic range.
Yes, thank you.
So you want the gain to be not too low. You want it ideally to be essentially to be the number of data numbers in your quantization to match the total electron capacity in a picture element.
Yes.
And if it's too low, you're wasting available.
Yeah, you're not shipping the data out efficiently.
In other words, you ideally want to have the camera gain set to have one data number per electron in the picture element. Yeah. And if the gain's too high, then you lose dynamic range. If it's too low, you're not going to get full use of the pixels.
Now the way I use it, I just judge it by you have to flatten out the response because you don't want any adjustments. Look at the image under various conditions and make up your mind, because that it's going to change. Under light polluted skies, ironically, you don't want much gain, which means you have to take longer exposures. It means fainter objects fade into the background simply because that you don't want to amplify that too much. At a dark side, you can increase it quite a bit because the background is no longer the limiting factor. The limiting factor is how faint can you look.
See, hey, David, I actually disagree with that. If you find the ultimate unity gain for your camera, that applies just as much in light polluted skies as it does in dark skies. What unity gain means is that you're getting the maximum pixel capture you can per, with all the math for that momentary. So what it is, unity gain is a really nice thing to know about your camera. Every camera is different. But then you get to adjust unity gain for what the hell you're doing, depending on the situation. Like for instance, the average ZWO, like 1600, is 139 is unity gain. But I spend most of my time with my 1600 shooting at 200. It depends on where you are and what you're doing. But unity gain is an insanely important number to know, because that's where the camera, the sensor, all of the stuff falls into that read. Optimized. Thank you. Good word. Optimized.
Okay. Yeah, we're approaching 9 o'clock, so I want to keep this thing moving.
Sorry.
Other than Richard and Vance for now, anybody else have a question before I let Martin?
Sure. Yeah, I have one quick question.
Okay.
So you're focused on live stack. Is it mutually exclusive with live stacking and storing images for processing and deep sky stack or something else?
No, you can do both at the same time. I've just
Okay.
never done it that often. I've done it occasionally, and my preference is to just trust the live stack and go with that. But if you're if you're one that you want to see and experiment and go ahead.
So there's a setting that lets you do both, or
Yes, there is a
Yes,
setting that lets you both.
if you're still sharing screens with me,
yeah, I see your
you
screen.
see my cursor?
Yeah, okay.
Where is it? Raw
That's it.
frames. Those are the unstacked frames right there.
Okay,
Okay.
got it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, Martin.
There was a box at the top, kind of a little bit right of center, that was showing the type of frame that was being captured: light frames, dark,
Right.
flat. Does that change automatically based on your capture selection? So if you select,
No.
start capture, no, it does not.
No, that's like I said. That's why this software is more complicated than I require. If you go here under capture, and since we're in the middle of a live stack, I can't do a dark capture, but you could highlight it here. For both dark and flats, those pop up individual windows that allow you to do more than you could if you went over here, which I can't see. Let's see if I can get that down here again. Here we go. Yeah. Somewhere over here. Let me pop that down. This is completely manual.
Okay.
This you're gonna have to set up everything. There's no averaging. You're gonna have to save that image. Either through one of these or others. This is for the hardcore guys that haven't quite got to, either don't know about this or they don't trust it, or for whatever reason they don't want to use it. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else other than Martin? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, Martin, next question.
What's the difference between the display histogram stretch at the lower right and the live stack histogram, there in the middle?
Well, the live stack, the display histogram down in here applies to still frames. It applies to anything that's displayed up here, including the live stack. The live stack thing also includes the adjustments made here. See, you can't take, see, for instance, if I went over here, if I went over here and said save all, or save all, it saves all the raw frames, and it'll save the eventual stack. But the only adjustment to those raw frames is this guy. None of the raw frames
No, Dave,
because this is just
that histogram does not control the raw frames.
This does not control the raw frames.
Does not control the raw frames.
Okay, so that's even better.
When you save the 32-bit raw, whatever you did there in that histogram is not affecting it. If you save,
wait. Okay, but if I went here and I said save all for the
that saves all the frames that come in, whether they're good or bad.
Right.
Okay, if you click the save under actions, go to the actions box to your left. There you go. You go click that down arrow. If you save as raw, whatever you did in the histogram during the live stack is gone. Okay, does not apply.
So this thing only applies to this displayed image.
Right, and then the save with adjustments includes that histogram adjustment.
Right, down here. It displays that histogram down here. So
right,
it could get complicated. That's why probably your best bet is to turn this off by flattening it, and just rely on this. That way you can see here exactly the way you're going to save it, unless you save it raw, in which case you might as well flatten this one too, which I just did. And that's what you see here. By the way, that includes the Vance, just to clarify for my own sake, that includes balancing the colors. It doesn't.
The color balance you set on the right-hand column of controls.
The way I have it set up, okay, so the way I have it set up here is exactly the way
that's what's displayed there during the live stack. But if you flatten that thing,
right, it did.
in the histogram,
right, which I did.
Whatever color balance you set on the camera,
right,
in the
up here
controls on the right,
apply.
That applies always.
Right.
So you set your color temperature, your color balance.
Right. I forgot where it was.
That column.
Yeah.
And make sure it's correct. I always set 5,500 Kelvin, or if it's only available as an automatic setting as it is with my camera.
Right.
I set that value by using the full moon as a gray reference.
Mm-hmm.
That'll set 5,500 Kelvins. Then you make other adjustments to correct color elsewhere.
Yeah.
Now, the thing to do here is the histogram adjustment for the live stack will help you deal with the color that's in the light pollution.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else? Martin has one more question. Anybody else have a question? Your question, Martin.
Okay. I would like to dip my toe into deep sky imaging with my planetary setup, and I'm wondering if I have any hope of doing that. I have, you know, a planetary camera that might, and a 8-inch ES HD, and I think the field of view of that is like 8 arc minutes by 6 arc minutes.
Yeah, that's more of a general question, but I'll answer it from my perspective. Be prepared for a lot of disappointment, because I went down that road too. I started off with, back in the mid 1990s, yeah, that far back, with a Wadtech black and white surveillance camera. Did great on the planets. And then I tried to do deep sky. Barely recorded the Orion Nebula. You got several problems with using a planetary camera, but the short answer is it's damn frustrating. So as soon as deep sky cameras, such as they were back in the mid 1990s, God, for a second, that's like, I've lived that long. As soon as they became available, I jumped to them, but I always keep my planetary camera. And that seems to be the general trade-off in astronomy. It happens with telescopes. You either have a great planet and close-up of the moon camera, or you have a great deep sky camera, but there's a gulf in between, because it basically amounts to magnification. To get anything on the planets and the moon, you need magnification. But that's the one thing, unless you're into really dinky little planetary nebula, that's the one thing that you got to back off on to get wide field of views, so you can actually capture something. Remember, the rosette is over a degree wide. Use a planetary camera on that, you'll catch one little strand. I'm not kidding. Also, at those higher F ratios, meaning higher magnifications, your setup is incredibly slow, meaning it's going to take a long time to collect any photons. That's why deep sky setups generally have F ratios. You ever wonder why those Richard Cradions and some of those others, like the one I've got, are F4, F2, sometimes lower than that? That's to make them fast so they can jam the photons onto the pixels quickly enough. Once you get in the realm of, and that's why Schmidt-Cassegrains, although they're F10s, most of the best photographs I've seen are with focal reducers, F6.6, sometimes F2. It's because once you get to those long focal ratios, oh my God, the exposure times go up through the roof really fast.
Got it.
Also, it's a difference between the cameras. The planetary camera is typically not cool. Certainly, every one that I ever had was not cool. Because when you're dealing with exposure times of a second or less, it's like, you know, who cares if the sensor's hot? You're not going to see that thermal noise. But for these sky objects, you need you need at least several seconds, if not, well, considerably longer than that. And then the noise levels start to really show up, which is why all dedicated deep sky cameras are cooled.
Got it.
Ever wonder about that? Even back then, in the 1990s, I know guys that took packs of dry ice in special bags and taped that securely to the back of their camera so they could get the damn sensor cooled off. I'm not kidding. I've seen that, and you could see if the night was warm and humid enough, you could see the clouds of white smoke coming from the camera. That's condensation, buddy.
I mean, all that being said, kind of what you were saying, things like M57, you want that zoom, some of those planetary nebulas, on a deep sky camera, where you don't have that tiny little sensor and those really tiny little pixels, you don't get a whole lot of resolution on a really small object like that.
Yeah,
So-
but you see, but it's always a balancing act, and one scope doesn't fit both. I mean, theoretically, and I've tried this, theoretically, you could put a Barlow on an F4 instrument and make it into an F8 instrument to get more magnification. And I've done that with planets because you have the brightness to compensate. But
Yeah.
one of the problems is how to balance that setup. Another problem is the exposure times just jumped up again.
Yeah.
It's a balancing act no matter what you do, Martin.
Right. I was just sort of hoping that maybe with the advent of software like SharpCap here with the stacking capability, I could keep exposure time short enough that I didn't need tracking and maybe get enough SNR benefit from the stacking that I could get something on maybe globular clusters, small targets. But it sounds like I'm destined to be frustrated.
Maybe
Well, you
not.
probably get away with it.
Yeah, my
Get away with
recommendation
it.
is what Vance is talking about right now. Try it.
Okay.
The software is free, at least initially it's free. It's free. I encourage anybody that has programs like this that once you start using it regularly, certainly I did this, contribute to the poor guy. I mean, you're contributing to further updates and support and stuff like that. But as with all things in astronomy, I've heard people say, yeah, you can do it. No, you can't. And my recommendation to everybody is just try it. And if you succeed, for crying out loud, tell us all, because I wouldn't have even known about SharpCap if it wasn't for Vance. So thank you, Vance, once again for introducing me to this software. It's a godsend for the type of work that I like to do in my amateur astronomy. And the other thing I forgot to mention about SharpCap, because it supports so many cameras, almost doesn't matter what camera you have. As long as it's a dedicated planetary, for sure, any dedicated planetary, any dedicated deep sky camera, it probably is supported one way or the other, ASCOM or native.
Thank you very much.
I don't know.
One other point I should make about SharpCap. During the pandemic, when I wasn't going anywhere and able to do anything else, I, out of curiosity, wanted to see what would happen if I tried deep sky imaging with an LAAS telescope mount. And I calculated that for a particular camera with a pixel size of, say, 3 to 4 micrometer pixels, that a 10-second sub-exposure would not see field rotation particularly well. In other words, it comes up to like at most 3 pixels in the very corner of the frame. I succeeded in getting images of a whole bunch of stuff deep sky with SharpCap, because SharpCap was capable of finding the stars as they rotate, lining them up and stacking the images into a beautiful image. And I posted those on my Instagram account so people can see what you can accomplish with an ASL telescope mount with a deep sky camera if you want to use it.
Yeah.
depending on the frame size.
Yeah.
It turns
try
out that small frame size is better, but larger pixels give you a chance to have a larger frame size. So for example, in my case, I could use a 2.4 micrometer square pixel on an ASI 183 camera, and I got some great images. Now, not great, acceptable.
Yeah.
But I could use a ASI 071, which is a 4.78 micrometer pixel, and I could get a significantly larger field of view. Same thing, same results, but a larger field of view. So it turns out that SharpCap has a lot of capability that I had not tapped before, except when I got frustrated with being stuck at home.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I should mention as an aside that I don't think, because it requires 10 stars to do the alignment, I don't think, and I've never tried to use LiveStack for planet images, because as we all know, if you adjust the level so you can see markings on Jupiter and even just pick up the moons, the 4 bright moons, unless it's a 5th mag star somewhere in the field of view, and you're lucky if you even get one, you don't have enough to do a LiveStack.
Right.
No, you can't do
It can't
LiveStack.
stack on extended objects, and especially anything with a variation of surface brightness like Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, all the interesting planets. Now, I mean, who cares about Venus, right? But or little Uranus and Neptune with the little green dots. It's like, who cares about that? However, I have successfully imaged Triton on Neptune. I tried for Nereid and never could get it. I may still try. And Uranus at least 3, and I think at one time I caught 4 of the moons using the deep sky camera and using SharpCap. Single image, 30 seconds, I think. So, but
Vance, to comment on something you just mentioned, are you saying then that SharpCap greatly increased your ability to get good images from a telescope on an LAAS mount?
oh no, I've never.
No,
No, that's Vance.
That's
Vance.
that's what I found out. I wrote a little article. I think it's still on the LAAS articles
Yeah.
website.
Yeah, it's still posted on the website under
So take a look for that, because I did write an article about that and how it worked. You'll see I was using a rather basic Hasselt mount with a 71 millimeter aperture telescope with an ASI 183, which is maybe twice as large a frame as you would get with a planetary camera, and it worked like gangbusters.
Now, one thing
Granted, it's not great images, but it worked.
yeah, one thing I had to comment on aldazimuth scopes. You still, in my humble opinion, dealing with the field rotation is bad enough. If you got an untracking mount, in other words, you in my opinion, you need a computerized mount that at least tries to track a star or something tries to compensate for Earth's rotations, because the more it trails, the less likely you are to succeed. You need pretty much pinpoint star images or a reasonable facsimile thereof if SharpCap has any chance to give SharpCap any chance of lining the frames up and putting it out there. So like a computerized mount, like these large Schmidt-Cassegrains, I'd give it a shot. You may need a field reducer. I got 2 I could sell you because they don't work with my equipment. So specifically, they didn't work with my Maksudov. I have a 180 millimeter f15 Maksudov, and I tried last week to try and do deep sky work because I thought of a workaround through SharpCap, basically fiddling with the gain. And I know you can't see me right now, but I got a big thumbs down for that thing. It just didn't work. So my deep sky scope is a 6-inch f4 Newtonian, and all the beautiful pictures I took at Anza Borrego, at Borrego Springs, through that scope. It's really nice. So there you have it. That's the old thing of, it's very hard, if not impossible, to find one thing that'll fit all. In fact, the joke about the Schmidt-Cassegrains was jack of all trades, master of none, which almost sums it up.
Guys, I hate to interrupt, but we're 5 minutes after, so
Oh, okay.
it's about time to wrap it up.
Okay. Was that it, Martin?
Yes, it was. Thank you very much. Really
Anybody else real quick?
And I just posted the link for Vance's article in the chat if you want to take a look at it.
That's good.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Vance.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Vance.
Okay.
Take care.
Take care.